Hey guys, in today's video I'm going to show you how to take this floor tillered stave and turn it into a bow.
The first thing you need to get is a long string, and a long string is going to allow you to start bending the limbs so you can see where you need to remove wood. I use bowstring material. This is B50 Dacron. I make my own bowstrings, and I made this string extra long so that I could use it for tillering. I put a loop on one end like you're seeing here, and this allows me just to hook it onto a bow with relative ease. On the other end of the tillering string, I actually leave it straight, and this allows me to tie a knot and make the string whatever length I need for the bow I'm working on at the time. To tie the loose end of the string to the stave, I use a bolt-end knot. A lot of people use a timber hitch, or otherwise known as a bowyer's knot, but I've always had trouble with those slipping during the tillering process. A bolt-end knot is not going to slip on you, and it's going to be easy to undo when you need to change the length of your string for your next project. You may have to do a little adjusting to get the knot right where it needs to be and to make sure there's not any slack, but once you get the knot correct, I promise you it's not going to move. Make sure that your tillering string is tied against the stave during this part of the process. If your string is too long, it'll bend the limbs straight down, and what you really need is for the limbs to bend down and towards the center, and that will better mimic the bending stresses that your final bow is going to see, and it'll allow you to tiller the bow more accurately. Now that you have your string attached, it's time to start identifying those problem areas on your limbs. If you have a tillering tree but no rope and pulley system, it's best to set a camera up behind you, and this will allow you to record the bending of the limbs so that you can go back and review that footage. When reviewing the footage, one of the main advantages is that you can pause your video footage where your bow is bent the most, and this will allow you to identify those weak spots and the stiff spots where you need to do work without actually holding your bow in that stressful position. Now, looking at this picture here, it's pretty obvious that there's some work that needs to be done. That left limb is bending way more than the right limb. Most of my bending is actually going on in the inner 1/3 of the limb, and that is the opposite of what I want right now. You want to start your tillering by getting the outer thirds and the tips bending. Make sure you have a pencil handy, and you can mark the areas that need wood removed, or you can mark areas that you need to stay away from. Your number one priority should be getting the limbs bending evenly at this point. Do not think about trying to meet target weights or draw lengths. Make sure that you're only removing wood from the stiff parts of the bow limb, and then also check the tiller frequently to make sure you're not creating new weak spots that might turn into a hinge. Both limbs of this bow are starting to bend pretty evenly, so now it's time to start thinking about the target draw weight. For this bow, I'm going to target 45 pounds of weight at 27 inches of draw length. I'm going to use my scale here to see how far of a draw length I can get currently with 45 pounds. And I'm going to make sure I don't draw the bow past that so I don't overstress the limbs. So I've found how far I can draw the bow and be at that 45 pound draw weight. And now I'm going to go ahead and pause the screen at the max draw, and this will show where I need to make some more tillering changes. And from what I can tell, that right limb is still a little bit stiff, especially in the middle to outer 1/3, maybe a little bit at the tip. And then of course the fades are pretty stiff on this bow still. So I'm going to remove a little more wood in those spots and then check the tiller again. Remember that in this point of the build process, you're only scraping these limbs. If you're getting wood chips instead of small shavings, you're going way too fast, and you may be seconds away from destroying your bow project. A little bit of scraping goes a long ways when you're this close to the final tiller. Next comes a really important step, and the limbs are bending evenly and they're also bending far enough down that I'm now able to put a short string on. So I'm going to take the string I've been using and shorten it up by 3 inches. Now that you have the short string on, you need to check the weight again. See how far 45 pounds of draw weight will get you in draw length. And on this one it got me to about 20 inches. With a target draw length of 27 inches, that means I've got 7 inches of draw length to work with to get this bow to where it needs to be. Since I've got my limbs bending evenly, it's now time to get the fades and the handle bending a bit. If you remember, this is going to be a bend through the handle bow, and that doesn't mean it's going to have a dramatic arc through the handle, just means I want it to bend a little bit at full draw. If the bow is shorter or the draw was longer, we would really have to push the limits of this bow. However, I've designed in a little bit of margin for this bow, and I won't have to ask too much of the handle section. This is arguably the most dangerous part of this build. When you go to thin the handle down, if you overdo it, you've weakened the bow in the worst possible spot. You absolutely have to tiptoe up to the point where it's bending properly. Now, if you're building a stiff handle bow, you don't have to worry about thinning the handle down. You just make all the bending happen in the limbs. This bow is now bending to 25.5 inches, which means I only have 1.5 inches to go to hit my target draw length. Once you get within 1/2 inch of your draw length, use some sandpaper to smooth out the tool marks and also to round off the corners and edges. Usually this little bit of light sanding will get your bow down to the final draw weight at the right draw length. So there you have it. Just like that, with a little scraping and light sanding, I fit 27 inches at 45 pounds. Thank you, and I'll see you next time.